Thank you. Okay, so I have been interested in assessment through most of my teaching years, and more recently I have done a graduate course with the University of Maryland in Baltimore County about assessment. And my school, for those of you who have who don't know that yet, my school in the English school in the Binational Center where I teach, we use alternative assessment only. There's no traditional assessment, there's no testing in my school whatsoever, in the school I work for. So I've always been interested I've become more and more interested in alternative assessment and ways of making that happen. So first of all, very quickly, what is assessment for you guys? What's the difference between assessment and testing? Can anybody tell me what do you believe assessment is, and or what's the difference between assessment and testing? Evaluation, yes, we very commonly associate assessment to evaluation. Yes, yes. Sue says that assessment is measuring learning in a broader sense. And Meek says that assessment is more continuous. Actually, yes, testing is related to exams. Perfect, Rasha, you got it. Rasha got the great prize. Testing is one kind of assessment. Assessment is an appraisal of students' performance or students' work, students' use of the language. Testing is a subset of assessment, is a genre of assessment techniques. So basically, testing is one of the ways we can assess students, right? So, and yes, assessment is actually, it can be continuous. Alternative assessment is continuous, Marcia. There's lots of ways we can do assessment, including traditional assessment and testing, which are not continuous and very restricted and limited in many ways. So this table was a huge hit on the presentation for the Reform Symposium, so I thought I'd share it again. Just comparing traditional to alternative assessment so you can get a better idea of what alternative assessment is. Traditional assessment is testing. It's the more test-focused, grade, a numeric figure evaluation type of thing, while alternative assessment is a more continuous and more about what the student does with the language and how he works with the language than just one moment of the student's learning process. Yeah, I love that list too. I wish I could take credit for that, but I just got it from one of my books. Okay, so while traditional assessment focuses on language, alternative focuses on communication. Traditional, I'm not going to read this slide for you guys, but basically alternative assessment is more authentic, because alternative assessment, in alternative assessment you look for whether the student is effectively using the knowledge, the learning he is acquiring in class to communicate and to do the kind of use he intends and he needs to with that. Alternative tests that teach. Yes. Why tests that teach? Because on alternative assessment you are testing the students, but many ways you're testing the students and using that as formative assessment, as a way of knowing where to go from there, how the students are doing, and what they need to improve even more, right? Okay, so moving on a little bit. So concluding, it was just a very quick brainstorm on assessment, just to get you to understand what is the objective of the activities and why I describe and I created the activities I'm sharing with you today. So my conclusion, and this is my personal conclusion, exactly, quality over quantity. My conclusion is that we're not supposed to evaluate how much information students retain, which is what traditional assessment does. Traditional assessment tests exactly how much students have memorized or retained and how much they can repeat back, while alternative assessment focuses on how they use the information and the functionality of the language they have learned. Yes, amen. So how can Web 2.0 tools help you with that? How can Web 2.0 tools help you in assessing your students in an alternative way, right? Okay, I've got some ideas here. The first one is for speaking, for example. There are many ways we can do speaking and many tools that we can use for speaking. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Audioboo and VoiceThread, Photobabble, Vocaroo, and all those audio-related websites and tools that you can record your own voice, where students can record their own voice. So here's an idea to how you can actually set up a task so that the students can do it and you can assess their speaking through it. You can tell your students to read a piece of news from a newspaper or news site. I especially like that for adult students, right? So you can also determine what kind of news. So you can, for this week, for example, we could tell the students to research and read about the terrorist attack in Israel, or about the economic crisis in the United States, or anything about that, and you tell them to read about it, right? And then they record their opinion on the topic, possible solutions if it's a problem, or possible measures that should be taken from there if that's applicable. And then they can either share among themselves, they can post on a wiki or a blog, a class blog if you have a class blog. Yeah, see, Edu, you're saying reports, but I don't like the idea of reports, because for me, alternative assessment is, I try to make alternative assessment and use it as the most authentic possible. What do I mean by authentic? When think of a native speaker. When a native speaker reads a piece of news, what is a native speaker going to do with that? What is the reaction of a native speaker to a piece of news, or what is he possibly going to need to use that, right? Well, when I'm a native speaker, or I mean, considering I speak English very well, when I read a piece of news in English, what's my reaction? I'll make a comment about it. I will probably not have to retell the story. Maybe I will if somebody else asks me about it, and that could be one thing. But usually what you're going to use it for is when you're sitting down with your friends or something, you're going to make comments about it. Did you hear about David Beckham naming his daughter Harper 7, and then you make comments about it. So that's the idea. You make the task authentic. You make the task authentic by asking the students, or finding ways that the students are going to need to respond to your task in the same way a native speaker would, or in the same way that he would in a real-life situation. Exactly, by chatting or by doing something like that. Rasha says that when they say it's better than when they write it. I like that. especially because I think speaking is a bit more authentic in the sense of it's immediate. They don't have time to rethink or go back and erase whatever they say. Hey, Bruno. Yes, exactly, I do. I've been trying to use with my students more tasks where they actually have to have authentic reactions to materials and tasks, right? Okay, so what I like about this idea is that they will compare. Once you read everybody's audio, they can compare each other, their views on the topic. You can have a follow-up, a discussion as a follow-up, a discussion in class where students compare their interpretations and their opinions on things. And if you use photobabble, you can tell the student to get an image from the news piece and then make a comment on it. Variations that have worked for me with my students, I've had them review a film they have recently watched, or go to a restaurant or read a book. You have to tell us about it. And so they put a little picture of whatever they are doing it about, or they send a picture and they record the audio comment. Okay, so that's an idea for speaking. Now, what you have to keep in mind when you're doing alternative assessment, you have to keep in mind the criteria you're going to be evaluating your students through. If you want them to use a specific function of the language or vocabulary that you have very likely to have to use those words or that function, or you can be very specific with them and say try to use that in your audio. But the criteria that you're going to be evaluating them through has to be as authentic as the task. So if the goal of the task is for them to comment on something, did they do a good job at it? Did they use the language effectively? Would anybody who or the restaurant or the film, would they be able to um, to to use that, right? And that's how you should evaluate as in alternative assessment. Okay. For reading, now that I found maybe you guys know it. Have you guys ever heard of Pinex? Because I like those woolly shirt type of things, but Pinex was a great find for me. Lino, it's very cute. Cool. Hey, Miguel. All right, cool. So I'm going to, cool, I'm going to teach you something new. All right, so this is something I've been doing with my students for a long time. Not a long time, but for about a year, using reading. Now, same thing. What on traditional, at least for me, on traditional assessment, traditional testing ways, when the students read a book in class or read a text, what were they asked to do? They were asked to read a book and write a book report, or read a book and prepare a poster about it, read a book and talk about the book, read a book and write a summary about it. That's very boring. I'm sorry, but that's very boring. And when in real life will a native speaker or somebody be asked to read a book, except for maybe academic purposes in the university, and even that I doubt most times, but when will they have to do that in real life? Most probably not. Again, when a person reads a book, what they usually have to do is comment on the book or form an opinion, or you know, uh, interpret the book on their own subjectivity. Comprehensive. Yes, I hate those comprehensive questions, and I tell my students, you will never get from me any kind of work where you say, who says this and this. So what have I been doing? I always choose a book or a short story or any text for that matter to have my whole class read. I usually have all of us reading a book, the same book, the whole class. I put the any text, especially for lower levels. And then you create a board for that reading. For those of you who like who know about Wallwisher. Linoit is very similar to Wallwisher. It's just, I think it's just prettier, and I actually started using Linoit because Wallwisher very commonly is down and you can't access and things like that. So we read the book all together. I create a board for that reading, and I say, okay, you have to read the books by, to have finished the book by a month from now. And so I create a board for that reading, and students questions that Russia know. Oh, 2 weeks, really? Oh my God, my student. No, I read a whole book in an entire semester. I mean, we do other types of reading as well in class, but for this project, I give them time. Oh, okay. All right. But anyway, you can do that in 2 weeks if that's their only reading for that time as well. You have to keep in mind that in my situations that I have my students for only an hour 15 twice a week, so I can't really. There's a lot of critical thinking involved. Yes, Eduardo. So let me just. I get distracted by the chat. Okay, so I create a board, and they have to share favorite quotes and passages. They have to ask questions, because that happens when we are reading books, right? You're reading a book, and something happens in the book, and you're like, why did he do that? Why did the main character do that? I don't understand. It's not that you didn't understand the story. It's things that come throughout the story, during the story, things that come to your mind, questions that come to mind. So they would post those questions in there. Any new vocabulary they learned. Oh, I learned this word. I had to look it up in the dictionary. I learned it from context. They would put the word and the definition for it, maybe. And what I do is I tell my students, you have to do at least two, you have to make at least 2 contributions every week. So the contributions, they can have, they can do any of those kinds. Share new vocabulary, ask questions, share favorite quotes or passages, and they have to answer or reply to at least one of their friends' questions. Okay, let me see. Yes, Eduardo says, with alternative assessment in reading, there's critical thinking involved. Yes, I think there's a lot of critical thinking involved in alternative assessment. And Louise, ELT Tech, is saying that it's a better way to assess because it's not at once, but in small pieces. For me, that's key in alternative assessment because the operative word in alternative assessment should be continuous assessment. Continuous assessment is much more reassuring to students, non-threatening, and much more effective in building firm learning, building real learning for them, because it helps them. You're able to help them throughout the process, not just at the end of the semester when there's not much you can do about it. Yes, much more fair as well, Russia. Miguel also mentioned that Um, these tools would be good for extensive reading. I actually do them for extensive reading, Miguel. We read a whole book, like real, authentic, non-EOT, non-graded book for them. Yeah. So at the end of the semester, I get these boards with hundreds of posts, and students have start having fun, and they ask funny questions, and they to interpret creating boards for reading. And why is it alternative? Why is it a form of alternative assessment? Because what you're doing is actually students are responding to the reading as they would respond to a reading in their native language. They are sharing their impressions. They are sharing what they learned. They are sharing their opinions on it. So it's much more authentic as well. Okay, so let me show you a little bit about Pinex and why I think Pinex is actually the best tool right now for this kind of thing. So Pinex, you can access it through pinex.com, and oh, the image is not as good as I would like. But if you can see here, Pinex tells you what are the latest posts. Pinex tells you what are the posts that have no replies to, what are the ones that have been there for the longest. You can see just the most recent posts. You can click on um, the ones that have been replied to, the ones that haven't been replied to. You can categorize what kind of posts you want to see, or what kind of post-its you want to see. It also shows in here, it also shows the latest activity in the board, right? And here you have like an outline of the board. You have 3 posts in here, and here you have how you post it. This is a book I'm doing with my students this semester called 5 People You Meet in Heaven. And it's as if I'm asking a question, why is the girl the first person he meets in heaven? I don't know that. The book is not clear about that. I'm not sure. So the coolest thing about Pinex is that I put the post-it there, and any student, yes, it's super easy to use, super easy. Any student, any other student can click on my post, read the question I asked, and reply to it. And the reply will be attached to it as if in a comment, as in a conversation. So it's much, much nicer than just, you know, loose post-its as we have in Linoit or Wallwisher. Let me show you. Yes, very good for monitoring. And if you, with this project, what I do is that if you establish, you have to make at least 2 contributions a week. If you go on Sunday, you can see whether they have given their 2 contributions, who has been working more, who hasn't, and the kind of work they've been doing. Can you? Yes, you can restrict it to your class only. You can give the link. You can make it private. Okay, let me show you just a couple more slides about Pinex. You can create polls on Pinex. You can create a poll and put on a post-it, and anybody who accesses the post can vote, and it gives you immediate, instant results. So this is a post I created for this board. It says, who's your favorite character so far? And then you've got the characters. You can put as many options as you can, and it shows once you access it. And here's what it looks like. Okay, you've got, see, it's little post-its. Now, if you click on the little green arrow on the corner of each post, you can, it opens up, and then that's when you can reply and you can edit and you can see things. If it's a little longer, you have a scroll bar, and I don't know if you see on the little purple post beside the green arrow, there's a little red bubbles thing. That's because there has been a reply to that question, so that you can click and see both uh, the question and the reply to it, or the comment and the reply to it. The blue post has a little orange circle beside the green the green circle with the arrow, and it means that's a poll. So when you click on the green arrow, you get the poll and you get to vote, or if you have voted and you can't, and it has been established that there can't be more than one vote, you can see the results. So hope you guys like Pinex as much as I do. I have really enjoyed finding out about it. Okay, one more for reading. That's a quicker one. Short stories, more beginner level students. I choose a book, a short story, or a text. I create a word cloud, either with Wordle, Tuxedo, Wordout, and from keywords with the text. Character names, more specific verbs, actions, places, and things like that. And if you decide to do it in class, you can project or put the word cloud printed out on the board, and then students take turns on circling or crossing out a word and talking about how that word relates to the story. In a way, they're retelling the story, but they're choosing how to. That's another thing that for me is very important about alternative assessment, and I really enjoy it, is that alternative assessment should be about choice. Alternative assessment, when being assessed through it, students should have a bit of choice on how to be evaluated. On, it's not about what the teacher wants you to know as much, but what you have learned. Show me what you've learned. I see alternative assessment as that. Show me what you've learned. So they would take turns in talking about it. And if you choose your keywords well, you can do it in a way that students will be forced to retell the story. And even by the simple sentences or contributions they make, you can tell whether the students have read the story and understood it or not. Another possibility, a variation for that, is to have students, you can send them the word cloud or show them the word cloud, give them copies of the word cloud, and have them use the word cloud, use the keywords on it to discuss, comment, do a writing on the text. This is something I used to do when I was a professor at the university and I taught history of typography. What I did with my students, instead of asking them specific dates and names of people, what I did was I would give them 50 keywords from the 5 chapters they had had to study and tell them, write an essay using 30 of these words, talking to me, telling me about what you learned from those 5 chapters. So, if they don't remember one or two of the words, it's okay. They remember the others, and we can tell them, we can tell who has read, who has understood or not. Okay, my idea for listening, as an is using one of the strip generators, comic strip generators such as Zimmer Twins or Strip Generator. I have given them a little audiobook, little story recorded. I haven't done any recording myself, but I will do it this semester. In about a week or so, I should be recording a text I want my students to listen to. So I choose an audiobook or a podcast of a story that I can make it or I can pick up from the web, have them listen to it, and after just listening to it, they have to create a comic strip retelling the story. So that's a great way to assess how much the student understood from the listening activity, because you will see if they've got the essence, the main idea, and the development of the story. You can do that with adult students. You can do that with newscasts or little soaps or things like that. A variation is give them most of the story but not the ending, and have them do this work, do the storytelling or creating the comic strip just for the ending. And that is actually funny. Teenagers like that because you get the funniest different endings, and they compare endings, and you can even have a vote at the end of class saying which was the best ending. Okay. I know that most people already like Glogster and use Glogster. I think Glogster is a fantastic tool to use with students. So um, what I'm going to be trying with my students this semester, especially because um, I've 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 been struggling with students not realizing how much they learn. I don't know if that happens with you guys. Students don't read, especially more advanced students, once they get to a B2 level or so, they start not noticing learning as much as they used to in the beginning levels. So I've been doing a lot of reflective work in class, asking them, so what did we learn today, learner training activities and things like that. But sometimes you do that in class and the next week they will have forgotten. So I am experimenting with this semester, and I'm having my students, after each month, I'm going to have them do a Glogster on my month. So August in my English class. And I'm going to do it every month. And they have to create a digital poster using Glogster about their learning, right? And I specifically tell them they have to put all skills on that poster. So they have to include some writing. So they can write paragraphs talking about the things. They have to put an audio talking about something, commenting or making a comment about describing one of the activities we've done in class. They have to put an audio, something they listened to in class, or something that was part of their learning process that month, and they can put a text the text they enjoyed reading most, and things like that. And I tell them to include. I don't say they can include. I kind of put a list of 10 things they can put, and they have to put at least 5 of them. But among them are favorite activity, something I struggled with, an activity I didn't like, and then they have to justify why they didn't like that activity. They should put a vocabulary log, like words that I learned this month, and they can put images on it as well to avoid writing a definition or translation for that. And an audio reflection about it. I think I learned this and this. This was a good month for me, or wasn't. I could have done this better. What are what are my plans? How do I think? What are my plans for next month? What can I do next month to make my learning even better? Okay. Yes, it could be made as a team. I like the idea of individual work because I think learning is such an individual activity. Everybody learns differently. So, okay, I know I'm past the time, but I'm starting to relax with this time issues because I'm not going to rush through presentations anymore. So any questions? If you have a question, you can either type on the chat box, or you can raise your hand and I can give you the mic. I like that too, Raj. It could work. Mariana, you're asking me how old are my students? If you're asking me, I have 2 or 3 groups of students who are 12 to 13 years old. They are what we call a Team 3 level. They communicate with certain limitations, but they can communicate. Most of my students are about 16 years old, and they are at a B2 level. Yes, this is great for teenagers. Yours are 8. Oh, I think you can do a great, you can do a collaborative Glogster then. KWL, kinesthetic. What do you mean KWL? Faisal. Faisal. Uh, yes, they can do all the kinds of activities I have suggested with certain adaptations. For the voice, for the audio ones, they can do it without any problems. The reading one, they love the boards. It's just that the kind of language they use is a bit different, right? It's simpler language. The questions they ask are more basic, even because when we're reading a text with 12, 13-year-olds, they don't really have the emotional and intellectual maturity to ask certain kinds of questions. So their questions are actually a bit more basic and more traditional in a way. Mustafa, you're asking which app or web page is most suitable for university students at prep school. I really like all of them, basically. I think maybe Glogster can be seen by university students as something more silly and more childish. So maybe you would lay off on the Glogster. But both the board and the with the post-its and the voice thread and the word clouds, I think they're all great things. Yes, if they use pictures or videos of themselves, it's a good idea to get parents' authorization if you're planning on displaying them, on making them available to the public. If you're not going to make them available, if it's just for you, there's no problem. Yes, Miguel, I agree with that. It really depends on how you present and plan the test using Glogster. You can choose to use Glogster in a more serious, classic way, let's say like that. Can we apply what you said about reading with the story we already teach as part of the syllabus? I do reading with the story as part of the syllabus. I do. I will, Martha, I will make them available in my blog. Yes, I will. Um, oh, okay. I will. So I will make them available. I will probably describe the activities at more at length in my blog as well, and so you guys can visit and share. And if you use any of the activities, I would love to hear how you used and adapt and how it went with your students. I always love to hear how people do things. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I hope I did a good job at filling for Shelley's shoes. And thank you so much for all the support and for um, for all your input and the questions and everything. Thank you so much. And this recording will be available soon on the American TESOL Institute homepage. Okay.